morning, everyone. We are in Daf Yomi Aleph Amud Beis, and we have seen the Mishnah that limits what a animal is allowed to be wearing, or what can be on an animal on Shabbos when it goes out into the public domain. As we've seen, that an animal is obligated, or actually we are obligated to make sure that our animals also are resting on Shabbos, as the Torah says, L'man Yenuach, and that you may not do work, you yourself, your household, and your animals. And as such, animals are also not allowed to do work, and carrying would be included, unless they're doing something for themselves for their own pleasure. Obviously, that they can do that, so they can graze, even though that they're detaching something from the ground. The Gemara is going through what counts as the animal is wearing it, where Rashi says that whether it's for its beauty or for its safety, it would count as wearing, but it has to be something that is normally worn. And the Gemara now deals with what about something that's excessive protection for the animal, something that the animal does not need to be wearing for itself in its protection. And as we've seen yesterday, that's something that is within the norm to be worn. That would be okay. But if it's excessive, the Gemara asks in the Turusi Userta, something that's an extra protection that is not typical, whether that's permissible to be worn. The Gemara says, we're about 12 lines from the bottom of Nun Aleph Amud Beis. That these wild Libyan donkeys and camels can wear an afser, which is a bridle. Ketanoi, as we've seen in Machlokes Tanaim, ein chaye yotze besoger, chananya chaye yotze besoger. So the question is, from the fact that in our Mishnah it says that the Luvdakim, the Libyan donkeys, go out with a prumbia, which is the bridle bit in the mouth, and here it says in a Gamal Yotzim Ba'afser, and here it says Luvdakim in the Gamal they wear a bridle. Well, which one is it? If it's enough for it with a bridle, so why does it need a bit? So the Gemara says actually Machlokes Tanoim. It's a Machlokes in the Brises in the Mishnah. Ein chaye yotze besoger, and we learn that an animal cannot go out with a soger, which is a collar made of rope. So an animal cannot go out with that. Chananya yotze besoger. Chananya said that they may wear a soger, and the Gemara says, what's the distinction? And then anything that will guard it. So are we talking about a large animal? Interesting. Rashi says a large animal would be like a bear. Would a rope around its neck even help you? So if you're talking about a small animal, Rashi says like a weasel. Why would it not work for them? Elolav chatul. So rather, the discussion is in regards to a cat, which really does not need to be guarded, Rashi says, in the same way, because it will come back, it's protected. It never wants to run away in any case. And yet the machlokes is, even though it doesn't need it for guarding, it doesn't need it for its protection, nevertheless, it's allowed to wear this rope. Tanakama says, well, you don't need a rope. A thinner twine would be sufficient, and therefore, masu. So, and therefore, it's just a burden on them. It's something they're carrying and not a garment. Hanania is going to say no. Anything that is guarding it, is protective of the animal, even if it's excessive in how much this animal would need, it does not count as a masur. That doesn't count as a burden on the animal. And as such, it's not they're carrying it, they're wearing it, and they're permissible to go out with it. Amar Rav Huna bar Chiya, Amar Shmuel, halacha kechanani. So Rav Huna bar Chiya said in the name of Shmuel, the halacha is like Hanania, that even if it's excessive in its protection, it's going to be permissible. And this is important because we're going to see seemingly contradictions in the name of Shmuel, whether or not he says halacha is like Hanania, that excessive protection is permissible or not. Levi bereder Rav Huna bar Chiya. Levi, the son of Rav Huna bar Chiya, Rabba bar Rav Huna, and Rabba, son of Rav Huna, Havakazli baruch. They were riding together on donkeys. And Kadma Chamra the Levi lechamra the Rabba bar Rav Huna. Levi's donkey went ahead of Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba bar Rav Huna felt slighted by this. Cholash daiti the Rabba bar Rav Huna. Why is he not riding with me? Why is he riding ahead? And what's the deal? So Amar Emil and Milza. So Levi.
Not that it matters, but were they brothers?
Huh?
Were they brothers?
No.
Or they just happened to both have a father named Huna?
No, his father was Rav Huna bar Chiya. It's different than Rav Huna. Rav Huna bar Chiya is different than Rav Huna. Yeah. Amar Emile Milza. She said, "Let me say something to him, so that I can, make him feel better." So Levi, noticing that it bothered Rabbi Rav Huna that he had cut him off, said, "I would, let me show him that was not intentional." Now we're on Nun Beis Amud Aleph. Amalei Chamor she'asakav roim k'goyin zeh. And a donkey usually doesn't need extra protection on Shabbos, but one like this, who it's not a wild donkey, it's not like the Libyan donkeys, but it's obviously hard to control and it just jumps ahead. Something like this, ma'alas is b'prumbia b'Shabbos. Does this also allow to wear a prumbia b'Shabbos, a bridal bit on Shabbos? Because it's excessive in typically for a donkey to wear a bridal bit. It doesn't need that for protection, but nevertheless, this was a little bit out of the ordinary. So he asked it about his particular donkey to show that it was unintentional that he went ahead in, and in doing so, he asked the question halacha. He said, no, this is what your father said in the name of Shmuel, that the halacha is like Hanania, and therefore it's true that would be excessive for this animal, but there's nothing wrong with having excessive protection on Shabbos. Tana Devei Menashe, we have a brayso in the Academy of Menashe. Eiz shachakala ben karnel, between the horns of a goat. If you put in if you make an indentation and put the bridle in there, so then it will actually remain in there. Then the bridle can be worn on Shabbos, because then it will actually protect the goats. But goats, because they have narrow heads, will a regular collar they slip out of. And therefore, that's not a protection on Shabbos. And if you put if you put that on them, it's actually going to be considered carry. It's only on account of that you put it between their horns and you made the space between the horns for it, that'll count as a good protection. Bar of Yosef, Tachalab is Kanamal. If you have a goat that is bearded, and in order to protect it and make sure that it doesn't slip out of its collar, you tie a knot in the two parts of the goat beard, and put the rope through there. So if it tries pulling away, it's pulling at its own beard, and it hurts, and it'll stop it. So Rav Yosef, Tachalab is kanamel. Kivan the imintachla koivla. Since if it pulls away, it hurts, and therefore it keeps the goat from pulling away. And therefore it's not going to remove the collar, and that counts just like putting the bridle between the horns, because it won't get out. Odilma zimin the rafi v'nafel. Or do we say no? Sometimes it can actually get away on account of that. It'll untie in the beard, and it'll fall off. And when that ring, the goat gets out of its collar, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to pick up the collar and chase the goat, and you're going to be carrying the collar for Amos and Rishus Harabim in a public domain, and that's a Torah prohibition. And therefore, to protect that, we don't allow you to let a goat out with a collar. Teku. So the Gemara says we don't have an answer to that, whether a goat can wear a collar if it is tied to its beard. Tanan also. We learned in regards to a cow that it cannot go out with a ritzua, a bow, between its horns. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Polik bar Rabbi Shmuel. There's a machlokas between Rabbi and Shmuel on this idea that you cannot wear a bow, that the cow cannot go out wearing a bow between its horns. Chad Amar bein lano bein l'sham. This bow that's between his horns may not go out regardless of whether it is there just for beauty or even if it's there for protection. One says no, only if it's for beauty, then the cow can't wear it on Shabbos, because it's not for its protection. It's not a garment for its warmth. It's just accessory on its horns, and therefore on Shabbos that's carried. And the animals have to be shvisas behemtas. Animals have to rest on Shabbos. L'shamer muter. However, if it's there for its protection, it's permissible. So Amar Rav Yosef t'stayim l'shmulu d'Amar l'noi aser l'shamer muter. Let's say that let's prove that it is Shmuel who says that for the protection of the animal, then it's okay for it to go out. Why? The Amar Rav Huna Bachia, as we've seen before, that Rav Huna Bachia said in Amar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, that the halacha is like Hanania, meaning that even excessive protection, as long as it's for protection of the animal, it's okay. So therefore, even any form of protection for the animal, even a rope between the horns, will count as a protection, and the animal's allowed to go out with that in a public domain. Abai says quite the contrary. Let's prove that Shmuel is the one who says that even for protection of a cow, it cannot wear a bow between its horns. The Amar of Yehuda Amar Shmuel, because Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Machlifin lefnei Rebbe shel zu b'zu. We saw yesterday at the end that they were checking to see what the halacha is if the items mentioned in the Mishnah and the animals mentioned in the Mishnah was switched around. If a camel was wearing a chatab, a camel was wearing a nose ring, which we said in the Mishnah, only the wild camel is what needs that, but a regular camel doesn't need that. And Amar Shmuel Rabbi Yesi responded in front of Rebbe, Kacham so my father said, that these four animals could wear an afser, which is a bridle, asus v'aperet, v'agamal v'chamor, a horse, a mule, a camel, and a donkey. And meaning it can only wear a bridle, but it cannot wear a nose ring. So you see, a camel is not allowed with a nose ring. Wouldn't it be that the camel can't wear a nose ring? So you see, even though that it's an extra shmira, it's just going to be excessive, but it does protect the camel. And nevertheless, it was asked in front of Rebbe, and Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi said in the name of his father that it would be prohibited, seemingly by inference. And Shmuel quoted the story. So we see Shmuel is of the opinion excessive protection is prohibited. Samihami Kamihas. It says, all right, so let's remove the statement that that Shmuel is the one who quoted the story of Rebbe and Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. He didn't say that because it's a contradiction in the statements of Shmuel. The Gemara says, why are you removing the statement that that Shmuel told the story that they were switching the cases of the Mishnah, and Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi said that his father said only that these four animals can go out with a bridle, and it included a camel, which seems to imply that only a camel can wear the bridle, but a camel can only wear the bridle, but it cannot wear a nose ring because the nose ring is excessive in protection, which would indicate that Shmuel is of the opinion that excessive protection is considered carrying by the camel and prohibited. Why are we saying that? Why are you removing that statement of Shmuel? And why don't we say that the statement that Rav Huna Bar Chia said, that Shmuel said Allah is like Hanania, that excessive protection of an animal is okay to wear on Shabbos? Why don't we remove that statement of Shmuel? Why are we moving one before the other? So my Havala. So what actually was the conclusion of this? So Rechiv Arashi Amar Rav said in the name of Rav, Bein Lanoi Bein L'Shamar Aser, that indeed it was Rav who said, regardless of whether it's for protection or for beauty, a cow cannot wear a bow by its horns. And Rechiv Rav and Amar Shmuel Lanoi Aser L'Shamar Mutter, and in the name of Shmuel, Rechiv Rav said that indeed, if for its protection, it may wear a bow between the horns, and it's only when it's wearing this bow on account of beauty that it may not be worn. So indeed, we have, like the Gemara first proposed, a statement in the name of Shmuel that for the protection of the animal, it may wear the cow, it may wear a bow between its horns. We see that if the owner bound a red heifer, a para aduma, with a mosira, which is a bridle, which it doesn't need, it's excessive in protection, it's going to be kosher. Now we know that Torah tells us that a red heifer, a para aduma, may not have any burden on it. A yoke has not gone on it. We know that any kind of usage of the animal, not for its protection, but if you put something on it to carry, it's going to be prohibited. And if you tell me in that excessive protection counts as carrying, it does not count as the animal wearing it, well then how come a cow wearing a bridle, which is excessive, is still kosher for para aduma? We should say this animal was carrying as a burden this bridle because it's not normal for it to wear it. It doesn't need it for its protection. And as such, it's a masoi. It's carrying something on its body. And so from the fact that we say that that the owner putting a bridle on the para aduma is not going to invalidate it. It's still kosher. It tells us that it's wearing it. It's not carrying it. And if you tell me it's a masu, that it's a burden, the Torah says that it may not have had a burden on it. That's what the Torah says. So Abaye proposes, we're talking about, of course, in the city, if you wore the bridle, the cow would be invalid as a paradum. The reason why it's still valid is it was taken from city to city. And that way, it is for the protection of the animal. Rav Amar, Shani Paradidameyakar. He says, no, I don't need to come on to that. The reason for why it's okay with the paraduma is because it's a very valuable animal, and therefore he's doing excessive protection. Ravina Amar b'moredes. Ravina says, no, we're talking about a moredes. We're talking about a cow that's going wild, and that's why we put it on, and it's needed for its protection. The distinction between these three answers is that are we talking about something that's the protection of the cow or the protection of the owner of the cow? The protection of the cow is any time that it would be in danger if it wasn't protected, whether it's for city to city or a cow that's having a hard day and is running around and needs to be protected. Whereas the middle answer of Rava says, no, the reason that he's allowed to put this on the cow and it doesn't count as excessive protection is for his value. Now, for the health of the cow, it doesn't make a difference how much it can sell for in the market. So that's a distinction between the two. However, just as a note, there are some that say that these are not three distinct answers, but they are all correct answers. As to any one of these is valid as a reason why an animal that you're doing excessive protection for is not going to be considered a burden, but rather consider wearing it, whether you're traveling from city to city, or it's having a hard day and it's being wild, or it's very valuable. So then that would be typical and normal for people to do excessive protection, and therefore wouldn't be considered carrying on Shabbos because that is normal in that day. Whereas it seems the halacha is that no, that it's only one of these are correct, not all three. And the idea is that it will have to be for the protection of the animals and not for the protection of the value of the owner. Back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah had said, a horse can go out with a collar. So my yotzin umaynim shachin. It says it can go out with a collar and pulled with a collar. What's the distinction? Amar Avuna o yotzin karuchin oynim shachin. It can go with the reins wrapped around the neck, and that's just as a beauty, or it can go with the reins hanging so that somebody can control it and lead it. And Shmuel says that it can go out only with the saddle, with the reins in a way that it can be led. But it cannot wear it around its neck because that's just as a beauty. And as we saw before, for beauty, it can't wear a rope or a boat. But Masnita Tana the Brisa, it says that it could wear the reins wrapped around the neck in a way that is beautiful, and nevertheless it has excess enough that he can put his hand into it and grab it. In this way, it is itself also for not only for beauty, but also that he could protect it and grab hold of it. I saw the calves of the house of Rav Huna. So in the household of Rav Huna, his calves went out with bridles on Shabbos, even though the bridles were not being held, they were wrapped around the neck. And I saw them doing that on Shabbos. We saw that the mules of the house of Rebbe would go out with their bridles on Shabbos. And they asked, were they being held? Was it used for leading these mules, or was it wrapped around their neck and not for leading? So Rav Yosef said he saw, Rav Dimi, when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bava. We saw this a couple of days ago as well, that there were Chachamim that went back and forth from the academy of Eretz Yisrael to the academies of Bavel, and vice versa, and they would bring the halachas that were learned and taught in the academies. So Rav Dimi, when he came, he said in the name of Hanania that in the household of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the mules wore their bridles, and now we're proving it from the fact when Shmuel bar Yehuda came, when he came from Eretz Yisrael, he said in the name of Hanania that He added a word into the story, and it was more specific. He said that when the household of Rebbe, the mules would go out with the bridles wrapped around their necks. It wasn't used as for leading the animals. It wasn't used as reins. Amru Rabbana Kamei Ravasi or Ravashi. So the Chachamim came and said, "Oh, we have a report from Eretz Yisrael. Shmuel Bar Yehuda told us in the name of Hananiah that this is what happened. Other of Shmuel Bar Yehuda leitzricha. Rav Dimi nafka. We didn't need the teaching of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda because last time when Rav Dimi came and he told us the story of even though he didn't put in the idea that it was wrapped around the neck, that was sufficient already. Because if Rav Dimi was telling us that the mules went out with bridles that were being held as reins, so then we already know the statement of Rav Yehuda in the name of Shmuel that if you're wearing it, that an animal can go out with a bridle that's being used as reins, like in our Mishnah. Of course, if you're leading the animal, that's going to be a part of the protection of the animal. We don't need a statement of Rav Dimi to say, oh, by the way, a story, I got a good story for you. In the household of Rebbe, that the mules went out with the officer with their bridle. Of course, if you're leading the animal with it, that's a protection. Of course, that's typical and okay for the animal to wear. The idea is of Rav Dimi, we understood inherently in Rav Dimi's statement that it was wrapped around the neck. It wasn't being used for the protection of the animal. It wasn't being used as reins. And nevertheless, in the household of Rebbe, they walked out that way with the bridle on Shabbos. That's a good statement. So we knew it already from Rav Dimi's testimony, a report. We didn't need Shmuel Bar Yehuda to tell us that. Rav Yehuda Shmuel machlifin lefnei Rebbe shalzu bezu. But as they said that Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, they asked in front of Rebbe when they would switch around the cases of the Mishnah. And in the cases of the Mishnah, we had the camel wearing a nose ring, which is excessive protection. And Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi said, so to which Rav Asi responded and said, no, we still need the testimony of Shmuel Bar Yehuda when he came and told us that in the household of Rebbe, they were wearing the afser, the bridle around the neck and not held as reins. And that's important to us. Why? I may have thought we may have thought that that Rav Shmuel Bar Yossi said, my father interpreted the meaning of the Mishnah to say that there are 4 animals that can go out with a bridle: a horse, a donkey, a mule, and a camel, and only a bridle, but not the nose ring, which tells us that excessive protection it can't wear. But maybe Rebbe didn't accept it. Kamashmal and Rav Dimi. Therefore, we needed Rav Dimi to tell us no, that he accepted it and he allowed the mule out with a bridle. The either Rav Dimi, but from Rav Dimi alone, I may have thought maybe only if you're holding on to it. However, aval kruchen loy. But if they are bound around the neck, it's not allowed to be. It's not allowed to be on. Kamash Malon, they're of Shmuel Bar Yehuda. So that's why we have the teaching of Shmuel Bar Yehuda. So we have the conclusion here. Excessive protection of an animal, something that is not normal for anybody in this place, for an animal to wear this protection, that's excessive, then it can't wear on a Shabbos. However, if it is typical for an animal to wear something like this, even though some people may use less protection, it is typical for an animal to use such protection. That is permissible and is not considered carrying, and they could go out even into a public domain like this. Tosa says, therefore, you can walk your dog on Shabbos, even in a public domain, because even though that some dogs don't wear a collar and don't necessarily have a leash, but some do. And the Tues is not talking about specifically a dog. Any animal of yours, you can take him out into public domain, even with the reins, even with a collar. However, Tues says two things you need to take into account. The end of the leash cannot be hanging out from your hand because that's non-functional, and that would be carrying. The leash has to be wrapped around your hand, or the length of the leash has to be between you and the animal. Additionally, it has to actually be hanging in the air. If it's within, if it hits the ground or is within a tefach below, right? If it's hanging down too much, so then it is not protecting the animal. It's just free reins, and as such, it's our free leash, and not really protecting the animal, and therefore it should not be done that way. So carrying, you can carry this in the public domain. It's not considered carrying, it's a part of the protection of the animal. So that's a garment of the animal. However, it has to be that it's not hanging beyond the hand one way or another, where it's not actually servicing the animal at that point, and therefore it's hanging and it would be carried. And this is obviously only if there's no eruv, it's in a public domain, but if it's in an eruv or a private domain, it's obviously that's not carrying in any case. The Gemara continues, the bottom of the base of an aleph. The Mishnah had said on the collar they would have a ring, and that ring is, if it became tamei, can go to the mikveh, and it would not be considered a chatzitza. We'll see more of that in the Gemara. It's not considered a barrier. It can go into the mikveh together with the animal, and you can spritz on it the red heifer water while it's on the animal.
Can I ask you a question before we go on? So if a person put on something on an animal that was not permitted on Shabbos, so I'm assuming since that animal is not allowed to have that on Shabbos, it's muksa?
No, that's only, it can't walk out with it. In my house, I could put it on the animal.
Oh. I'm just wondering, you could take it off on Shabbos. You could take it off the animal on Shabbos.
No reason not to. I mean, the animal itself is muksa. You can't pick the animal up. But if the feet of the animal remain on the ground and you're just working with the animal, you can do that. You don't move the animal per se. The wearing of these things is only if it goes out. It means it goes out into public domain, because then it's carrying. It's one of the malachas of Shabbos, but it can wear it in the barn or in your fenced-in area. It can do whatever it wants. It can wear anything. These rings that are on the collars of horses are susceptible to tumah. How can that be? But Tanan, we learned tabas adam tameya, tabas behema v'kelim v'shar kol tabayis toras. We have a statement in the Mishnah that says that a human ring, a ring that a person wears on their hand, so that's going to be susceptible to tumah. It's a garment, it's a vessel. However, rings that are used on animals, such as collars and rings on the collars, or rings of vessels, which is like a pot cover handle or so on. V'shar kol tabayis, or other rings, which are rings that are on doorways for locks and for handles, and that's attached to the door, which is attached to the house, which is attached to the ground, and anything attached to the ground is not susceptible to tumah. And this ring is a part of the house, and so it's not susceptible to tumah. Now we're on Nun Beis Amud Beis, 52b. Taharas, these are all tahar, meaning non-susceptible to tumah, because they're not really a garment, an adornment. Amar Rav Yitzchak Nafla said, our Mishnah is talking about that it was a human ring, and then they put it onto the horse's collar for use as attachment to the collar. And so it was, Rashi says, already became tamei as a human ring, and now it didn't lose the tuma, as we'll see in a moment in the Gemara. Or Tues says that it was susceptible to tuma as a human ring, and it didn't lose its susceptibility without an action. Rav Yosef says, no, it's not talking about a ring that was once a human's and became the horse's ring, but rather the reason is because it actually services the human, because he's using, it's not a ring for the animal, it's a ring for the human in order to be able to protect the animal, to hold on to the reins. Well, then it's servicing the human, so it's his own vessel susceptible to tumah. And we learn makel shel behema shel mateches mekabel tuma matam. We have a metal rod used for a prod for the animal is susceptible to tuma. Now, it's a simple piece of metal and must be a complete vessel in order to be susceptible to tuma matam because a person guides the animals with them. So too over here, this ring services the human in as much as that he can guide the animal with it, and then therefore the ring is susceptible to tumah. And you take it to the mikveh in its place, meaning so while it's on the collar, you take it to the mikveh, the horse, the mikveh, the river, if the river is a kosher mikveh, whatever it is, and you get the water up to the neck, and then the ring has been tovel. The Gemara says veika chatzitza, but there's a barrier. You have the collar blocking the water from getting to the ring. Ravami b'sharitcha. Ravami says that this has been loosened, so they would stretch the ring, and it's been loosened. Let's say Ravami is following the opinion of Rav Yosef, who said earlier that the reason why these rings are even susceptible to tumah are on account of that it services the human. The Ikar Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, because if he follows the opinion of Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, who said that it's talking about it used to be a human ring and then it became an animal ring, and therefore it was susceptible to tumah or was tamei and therefore remained tamei, well, then we have a problem. Once he did an action to it, once he stretched it and made it wider, it's not going to be susceptible to tumah anymore, or not going to be tamei anymore. And in the concept is this: we've seen this a few times, that a vessel is susceptible to tumah. What defines a vessel? Either your action or your intent. For instance, I'm making some, I'm working some leather. I have a piece of leather that I deciding what to do with it, and I decide, you know what, it's a raw piece of leather, but I'm going to put it down as a mat. So it's an unfinished product until I say intend I'm going to use it as a mat. Now it's a finished product. Then after a while, I say, you know what, I'm done with it being a mat. I'm actually going to cut it and turn it into a wallet. Then it only loses its susceptibility to tumah on account of my intent of using it for a mat with an action. I have to start cutting it down. I have to start doing something to it to change that susceptibility to tumah. Same here with this ring. The ring is susceptible to tumah because it was worn by a human. It was intended for a human ring. Once I decide to make it an animal ring, a ring on the collar of a horse, it doesn't lose its susceptibility to tumah yet. It will only lose its susceptibility to tumah at the moment that I do something to it to make it an animal ring. Well, if you stretched it and you expanded the ring in order to make it an animal's collar ring, well, at that point, it's now susceptible to tumah on account, no longer susceptible to tumah on account of that it's an animal's ring, not a human ring, and I did so through action. I changed it, and therefore it should no longer be susceptible to tumah. And the Tanan, as we learned, intent is sufficient to make something susceptible to tumah if I consider it a finished product by deciding my leather is turning into a mat. But in order for it to stop being susceptible to tumah, be raised up from Tumah, I need an action. And over here I have the action. So if we follow the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak, that the case is that it was a human ring first, and that's why it's susceptible to Tumah, it should have lost its susceptibility if you stretched it. So Gemara says, no, he follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's only if you do something to change, to break down the usage of it. In the case of cutting down the leather, it's no longer a mat because I've ruined the mat by cutting it down. However, if I'm fixing it by stretching a ring, I'm only enhancing its usage. That would not count as diminishing the use, and therefore it's still going to be susceptible to it. The Tanya was learned to however, in the Brisa we learned it's talking about hollowed out, so it's a half pipe ring, and therefore it's not going to be a chatzitza because the water can get in on all surfaces. Gemara now tells us two stories of someone asking Rabbi Eliezer a question, and the Gemara misunderstands, in both cases, misunderstands Rabbi Eliezer's response, and it takes a while to get there. So Shal Talmid Echem Megala Elyon, and a student from the Kollel Elyon from the Upper Galilee asked Rabbi Eliezer, Shamati Shecholkin Ben Tabasa Tabasa. I heard that there's a distinction in halacha between a ring and a ring. And the Gemara later realizes that the question was asked specifically about a metal ring, but he didn't. The Gemara at this point doesn't know it. So Amalei Shemale Shamate Elyon Shabbos. He says no, that's not correct. Can only be that you heard this in regards to Shabbos. The Elyon Tumah, because if you learned this in regards to Tumah, Davida Achadi, then they're actually exactly the same. There's no distinction between one metal ring and another. But the Gemara didn't know that he meant metal, so the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Well, the Indian Tumah Davida Achasi, in regards to Tumah, it's really one. All the halachas are one. But tonight we learned clearly, Tabas Adam Tamei Tabas Behema V'Kalim V'Shar Kol Tabas Taurus. The Mishnah that we learned earlier, that a human ring is susceptible to Tumah, and animal rings and rings of vessels are not susceptible to Tumah. He says, no, you misunderstood what he was saying. The question was about, and what he was saying, he's talking about human rings. So he says, that's still not sufficient. The Adam, Davida Achasi, even human rings, are they really the same in susceptibility to Tumah? But how do we learn? A buckle, a ring used for a buckle, Rashi uses the word buckle in the Old French. And a ring used on a vest. Also, Rashi uses the Old French word for a vest. So, tahara. So these are going to be tahar. Because those rings are there to service a garment, but they're not actually a garment in and of themselves. And we only say that it's susceptible to Tumah if it is a ring for the finger. Says, of course, he's talking about a ring for the finger. But there too, there's a distinction. But then we learned about a metal ring, which is a proper ring that has a signet made of wood. That's a proper ring and therefore susceptible to Tumah. But if it's made of wood, the ring itself is made of wood. That's not a nice ring. That's not a proper ring. So it's just a piece of wood, and it's not going to be susceptible to Tumah, even though that the signet is metal. The question was also about a fully metal ring, and therefore his response was, in a metal ring of a human finger, there's no distinction in halacha, and only in regards to Shabbos. He also asked, he asked him in regards to a needle. I heard that there's a distinction between needles. In Shabbos, he said there too, no distinction between Tumah, only in regards to Shabbos. The Indian Tumah, Davida Achasi. So the Gemara says there too, the Indian Tumah, Davida Achasi. Really? There's no distinction between a needle in Shabbos? But Tanan we learned, a needle that lost either the eye of the needle or the point of the needle, It's no longer susceptible to tumah. It's not a vessel anymore. So of course, he's talking about a full a needle, not a broken needle. A broken needle is not a needle. Even by a complete one. If it became rusty, a ring is, if the needle became rusty and it's leaving a mark, so therefore you can't actually sew with it, it's no longer susceptible to tumah. And lav tamei, but if it doesn't leave a mess, so therefore you can still use it, it's tummy. On account of that, it leaves them. You can see the rust. So the Gemara says, "Kika malei b'shifa." He cleaned it with lime, and therefore it's no longer rusty. So what? Even if it's been cleaned, is there really no distinction? In regards to Shabbos, whether it has an eye of a needle or not, you're allowed to move it on Shabbos. And in regards to the salacha that requires a needle to have an eye of a needle, we only said that elenian tumah bilvad. That's only in regards to tumah itself. There, to the susceptibility of tumah, there it requires that it has an eye of a needle. But without the eye of a needle, it will not be susceptible to tumah. So how can you say it's all the same? No, it depends. If you're making it out of raw material, you're cutting down a piece of metal into needles. So there, it's not a finished product unless it already has the needle. However, the eye. However, if you have a finished product and you're using it as a pin, as a needle, and you just don't have the eye, that's still susceptible to tumah, regardless of whether it has the eye or not. So that ends the tumah question over here. But this all came in order to tell us that a ring is susceptible to tumah on a collar of an animal, and that it can go to the mikveh together with the animal. Tomorrow we'll continue with garments that an animal can wear for its own protection, and that it counts as a garment. Yashikach.